Thank you very much, Femke. So I think this is when we hand over to Omer to give a few reactions on what he's heard.
Thank you very much, Yen-Pei. They say it's toughest to speak in the end, more so when you are speaking after two very learned people. So I think pretty much all the important aspects were covered by Femke and before that you. Um, I think this is the need of the hour in that the entire world is being impacted, as we all know, by the climate change, the impact on the environment, and it is high time that we start talking about these things. More so, developing economies, because of the lack of infrastructure and the abilities to deal with the repercussions of climate change, uh, should actually be more focused in these areas. And I was really taken aback by the pictures that you have seen. I mean, we all see them around us, but it's when you put these things in perspective that the reality really hits you hard, how the things are changing. And if we do not start changing our course of action and leapfrogging, as Femke said, what could be the repercussions in, say, maybe our time or for our future generations for sure. However, the ideas certainly need to be communicated consistently, especially more so in terms of lobbying with the policymakers, the think tanks, the people who develop the thought process so that it can start taking roots. I shared a couple of important questions with you, which would really outline how the thought process at the two spectrums work. I haven't seen anyone who would say this is not a good idea. I mean, anyone you speak to would say, yes, it's really good. We should do this, and we should try to protect our environment. And if we can use text as a force for good in doing so, what is better than that? Having said that, people do have their reservations. Earlier this year, we had that event that Yen-Pei was referring to, and you, Femke, were also there. You gave the presentation. So we had that interaction there with the policymakers too. And later on, even afterwards, I was in touch with Yen-Pei. We followed up with some of the key decision makers. And while they were appreciative of the idea, they were like, putting things into perspective that okay, if we start doing that, we'll start losing the competitive edge, and we are still at the early stage where we haven't really tapped into our natural resources potential, and leave aside the developed economies, even if we look locally at some of the competitors in terms of business competition and economics. So those countries have developed more infrastructure and have tapped more into resources. So if at this stage, without a global consensus and some kind of a mechanism where such countries can be compensated for following these policies early, if we start doing that right now, we are a developing economy as well. We have to look for other options, provide economic opportunities to people. So how to balance that? And I think that is a very valid concern that needs to be addressed, and people need to be educated on that. Similarly, I was speaking to some friends back in UK as well as Australia, and they were like talking about the entirely other spectrum. They were saying like, we all know UK's economy is primarily service-based. Financial services is a big component of that. So they were saying, how do you propose it should work out in an economy like ours, where the largest segment is services based and is using their natural resources to a minimal? So what would be the impact on the tax burden? If we just start going on taxing the natural resources, one way would be that you tax at a comparatively higher rates as compared to other economies which are not based on service sectors. So I think these are important considerations which we need to work on and educate people about. Um, in addition to that, I think we also need to continue the efforts that you guys are doing, and try to have a consistency about it. The like we can maybe plan a calendar event or something like that in the countries where we have started this debate, that we should have a frequency of events where we are following up on that debate. So the process is consistently going on. And obviously, when we'll be doing that, lobbying would be happening. Um the reservations of people, policymaker, think tanks, they would be put out in front of us. We would get some ideas that can be addressed and incorporated, and hopefully that can lead to ultimately a space and a place where decision makers and people are more comfortable in adopting these policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omer. And they're very helpful thoughts, and agree with a lot of what you said. Femke, do you want to take a few minutes to answer some of Omer's points now, or should we move on to closing the closing poll and take the questions after?
Sure. No, I'd like to respond, and I'd like to thank Omer for his kind words and his interest. And I really do agree that that there is not one single perspective here. There is no silver bullet. There is just there is a big question on how to deal with these issues on a country by country, but also on a regional and global level. So to have this conversation is so valuable, and to continue and build on these conversations is very important. It will take time, it will take effort, it will take more research, also to look at what is the low-hanging fruits in different countries, what are the dynamics, what are the different sectors that would be vulnerable or stronger in future. So it's a massively interesting debate, and I really hope that we can continue to have these conversations with ACCA and its network, because it's extremely valuable to gain ideas and also different perspectives from around the world. So when it comes to a country like Pakistan, for example, I so much appreciate that we have had a conversation with many high-level individuals, and I would recommend that maybe we could also do a more specific analysis on what the risks and opportunities are for a country like Pakistan, and to look more closer into the dynamics there, and to see what the benefits would be, because of course competitiveness is super important, and to build competitiveness in a resource-restrained world is going to be more and more important as well. So tapping into human potential will be one of the keys towards competitiveness, I guess, in future. But to look at that from all the different perspectives would be really important to gain more support and more understanding. So thank you very much.
MK, I would also like to add some good news here.
Yes.
Since that last event, there have been some real positive developments.
Yeah.
ACCA in its budget proposal also spoke about the carbon taxation, which is a core point of this report. And we had some really serious and fruitful discussions with the policymakers, and the interest is huge. So with the kind of efforts that we are doing, hopefully in a year's time or in due time, we'll be able to see Pakistan as one of the first few countries where a major segment of the taxation might be focused on this. There are a few taxes at the moment which are covering this area, but they are a very small proportion and they have multiple aspects. So this is not the core element. Secondly, the federal capital, Islamabad, has already banned the use of plastic bags. You might have heard that over the news, and it's going really successful. It's in the implementation phase, and there are already talks about extending that to the largest province in Pakistan, that is Punjab, which has almost 100 million population, more than 100 million. So there are also talks, if these steps go successfully, of educating people and starting with certain segments which are very high pollutants, and perhaps introducing some sort of a charge, a tax on them. However, as you rightly pointed out, it definitely needs a lot of work identifying as you rightly put it, the long hanging fruits, the pits, the pros and cons with regard to every individual country, the region, and perhaps a global framework where this entire process can take shape. And certainly, it can't be done overnight. It would take the due time. But the efforts that we are doing, I'm really glad that you guys have taken this initiative, and the amount of research and effort you have put in this report really shows that how close this is to your passion and to your heart. And I look forward that after Bangladesh, hopefully we can have a similar research report for Pakistan and other countries as well. So thank you for your good work as well. Over to you, Yen-Pei.
That's really good to hear. Thank you, Omer. I thought I had a few thoughts that I might add to the competitiveness question, and also the question about an economy that's probably more service-based than natural resource-based. On competitiveness, yes, each country has its specific characteristics and that require careful analysis. But another way, of course, to address the challenges of competitiveness is for countries to work together. So we have, I think, on this call, people right across the region. So from Pakistan to Sri Lanka and UAE, if different countries' governments could agree on a common objective and start along the same path, then the risks of losing competitiveness will obviously be mitigated. And I know it's not easy, but it's definitely worth exploring that. And sort of looking at the country in itself, I think there was a question about how would this work for developing countries, and I think Femke's Bangladesh example really illustrates how the tax shifts could work in such an economy where more tax revenue is needed, and natural resources and phasing out those subsidies will already increase the tax revenue, as Femke pointed out. And then even though we're talking about reducing taxes on employment, as employers get incentivized to employ more people, and more people get decently paid work, they will start to enter the tax net, and I think and consume more as well. And overall, I think that will also benefit. Thinking about a service-based economy, I think it's an interesting question, isn't it? The link to natural resources might not be so evident, but even for a service-based economy, we are constantly consuming energy. We are still consuming different products, and if you think, for example, I think the question referred to companies mining, investing in cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrency mining requires sort of a lot of server capacity, and those servers also use a lot of energy. Again, that's a cross-border issue, because where the service economy in that country might be requiring servers based in another country, in Iceland, for example. This may link to another big debate that is happening globally, led by the OECD, and that is, how do we tax the digital economy? What constitutes what constitutes the heart of a digital business? where do we say a digital business value is created? And the OECD is looking at all sorts of different approaches. And not to say that this is this is a popular one, but where the servers are based the servers are obviously an important part of a digital business. So all of that goes into the mix as well as we think about tax policies in the round.
Yes, if I might add, Yen-Pei, in terms of service economies where the use of natural resources is minimal, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes.
Well.
Okay. Good. You know, many countries. So where I come from, we have very minimal resources available. So we import most of our, a lot of our consumption is based on imports. And actually for the whole of the EU, we have issues with, we don't have our own resources, and we're very depending on other economies to deliver those products to us. So in terms of tax revenues, every economy will have their own dynamics in terms of services and consumption. So we always have to look at the aspects of a whole economy, and especially when there's consumption of fossil fuels or metals and minerals and plastics and a lot of waste being produced. There will always be tax bases for governments to put a price on, whether it is imported or whether it is sourced nationally. So this is where the competitiveness issue comes up again. There is a drive towards the circular economy. There is a drive to use fewer resources, to be less depending on fossil fuels. So countries that are currently the providers of those resources also will see the market changing, either shifting to other regions of the world or an increasing need to do more with less. So to use resources wisely and to try and add as much value for the population nationally or regionally as possible. And so in terms of the circular economy, this provides a lot of interesting new dynamics in terms of trade patterns and where resources will go and where do they go after the life cycle of a product. So there's a lot to be found out on these issues. But when it comes to tax revenues, any country has the duty to protect citizens of harm, of pollution, and to provide a pathway or to enable the type of economic growth that can be sustained by next generations. So we need to think ahead, and we need to try at least and plan for that type of economic growth, whereby countries with a lot of resource extraction sometimes also have a large population that is in need of decent work. So to put one and one together and to try and accommodate for each of those needs. And that's a big challenge, and tax can, we think, play a key role in that. In terms of both raising revenues and in terms of using revenues, in terms of supporting industries A versus industry B, and in terms of also the structure of education and healthcare, for example, which are highly labor-intensive activities, and to at least enable the population to enjoy those services and be healthy and educated in order to again have opportunities in globally to use their potential. So these are vastly interesting topics, I think, and I would really love to hear your ideas more and on how this might work in your country, or the questions that you might have.
So before you take questions, just to add on to the conversation that you and Yen-Pei have built, um, absolutely agree. This is the need of the hour. We need to research. It's a long-term thing, and we need to see the various aspects. For example, Bangladesh was discussed repeatedly as a model as well as the next research avenue. Now, as you rightly pointed out, Femke, Bangladesh, the largest export is from the
The
cloth
garment.
industry, the garment industry, and you might find, you would definitely already know, but most of our audience would find this interesting, that Bangladesh hardly produces any quality cotton. So that's mostly been imported into the country. But because of the other factors, the investment climate, the regional move of the investment, the extremely low cost of the labor, etc., there has been a shift over the last few years, and then add on to that the GSP plus status, which allows them to export more competitively to the European markets, etc. So all these factors are there. Now, if you look at it, it seems like they are doing really good in terms of these SDGs, in terms of controlling pollution, etc. But we have to incorporate these factors, as you rightly pointed out, the various local factors. Now, if you compare that to another country like UAE or Pakistan, or even Sri Lanka, the factors would be much different. The trains are different, the kind of natural resources are different, the landscapes are different, the economic prosperity is different, and where they are in that ladder is different. So all these factors, it's a very delicate balance. We have to look at the countries both individually, as you rightly pointed out, as well as their relationship, the regional implications, and then the larger global question. So just wanted to add that. Otherwise, all the other points have been covered by your good selves. So,
Thank you.